And if they do that, well, you just start all over again. Okay. Now for a lot of you, I am, you know, repeating what I've said before, but then keep in mind, not everybody has taken the time to look at my other videos. I highly suggest, you know, that you do. You go from the very first video that I made all the way up to present day, because the way I set it up is that I took the most basic information, like, you know, what is this? This is molding sand. Well, what's the molding sand made of? You know, that kind of information, all the way up to how to ram a mold. And now I'm giving you examples of certain types of molds that you can be making, especially for you guys out there that are trying to repair older machines like Keith Rucker, Keith Fenner. I think I've even seen Randy Richard might have been doing it, and a whole lot of people out there that's really into repairing, you know, the old machines and getting them back up and running. And some of them even want to make sure that it's as close as possible to the same condition when it was brand new back in the decade that the machine was made. So, you know, instead of using like a hex nut or a hex bolt, you know, something that's much easier to find in today's, you know, hardware shop, or rather hardware department in the stores, you can they have to make those you know, the square head types, because that's what they had back then. And it does look a lot more authentic, you know, than the hex heads. Kind of would be a waste of the time to not go as much as you can towards getting it just like it used to be, because they're, you know, in many of the places that they're being put in museums and such, some of them are actually ran, you know, they're used for what their intended purpose was, which is neat to watch. There was one, I think it was Keith Rucker did, where it was a giant, you know, milling, no, it wasn't a milling machine, it was a giant, where the big blade, you know, makes this smooth, okay? Planer, there you go, planer. There was a lot of work to do on that. And it finally got done. And I think we even were able to see it being utilized. Unless I'm thinking of somebody else. Anyway. Let's see if I can raise this up a little bit. Get it closer. When you get my age, you got to work smarter and not harder. I used up, I think, all my good muscles when I was young. Anyway, so here we are. The drag. I think I used up most of my good brains too. The drag is almost rammed up. Okay. Spread this all out, kind of even. Now this is not yet that you use the butt, all right? You're still got to try and get this sand to adhere with strength to the previous level that you made. Every move I make is there to make a good casting. And because I'm basically pretty lazy, I don't want to have to do things over and over again. You know, I've done a lot of molding in the Navy, and the fantasy of molding something has been replaced with the work of molding something. One good thing about being a molder, though, is that you not only can make machines, parts for machines, like what I'm doing here. This is going to be part of a machine. You can also make artistic things. Do I have anything in here? Don't think so. Anyway, now I'm going to use the butt end, okay? See, I don't even go past the surface of the bottom of the mold. Okay. Now, if I haven't been too careless, you'll see that these things don't fall apart. Now, this stuff that's excess above this surface here, it ain't going to go away by itself. What you do is you get something like this thin piece of angle iron. You put it on the edge, on this surface here. You rock it back and forth and proceed away from you. This is called striking off. And now what you have is a nice flat surface. But you're not done yet. Okay? When you're making these, you got to keep in mind, you know, what is this right here? This sand. What's the sand made of? In my case, the sand is made of silica sand. It's got bentonite, which is a clay wrapped around all those grains of silica sand. And then water is attached, rather mixed in with that, so that the clay that's wrapped around the silica sand becomes sticky, and then all those sand grains will stick to each other. Okay. Well, the bad thing about having all that is that when you come in this comes in contact with molten metal, some of that stuff, well, turns into a vapor. For instance, in this case, the odds are very good that the sand is going to, you know, the moisture in the sand is going to evaporate really quickly, and in most cases turn into a steam or a vapor. Okay. Here's the reason why you do what I'm about to do. If I could find the dang tool that I want to use. There you go. What you got to do, despite the fact that this is going to be sitting on a piece of board like this, okay, you've got to provide vents for that vapor to escape. If you don't, the vent or the vapor could accumulate inside your vent, your mold cavity, and if it builds up at all, it'll not only displace the molten metal that's supposed to go into a corner or, you know, wherever it's supposed to go. It might displace that metal, and you have a very bad defect in your casting. Or if the steam doesn't have a way to go, it could just totally explode like an M80 or a big firecracker going off, which will not only ruin your casting, but the worst part is that molten metal, still molten, it just might go all over you or over your vehicle, or if you're doing it inside, which I don't suggest, if that goes anywhere, you could start a fire, you know, because that stuff is hotter than a flame, remember. No matter what you're melting, even aluminum. A flame on average is like 1,000 degrees. Molten aluminum is 1,100. The pouring temperature for aluminum is 1,250 degrees Fahrenheit to 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're going to have an explosion if you don't make allowances for it. In this case, I got this is a little thick. This is a little thick. If you could get something, like twice as thick as that, but not as thick as this, I think it'd probably work just as well. But this is the first one I made. Okay, so you go all around, keeping in mind not to do it so hard that you're going to screw up your pattern, because some of your patterns aren't going to be made of metal just like this one is. It might be made of pine wood or plastic, and if you hit it too hard, you might ruin it. So you just go in, you go a few inches, give it plenty of capability to come out and not make a problem. Now, there's something in the sand called permeability. Okay, now this looks pretty solid right here, and you might not think that it's got the capability of letting anything pass through it. Okay, but if you hand ram like I do, I don't use a pneumatic rammer. I have a pneumatic rammer. Someday I'm going to remember to get it out and show you how it works. But you hand ram everything, you're never really going to get it hard enough that the gaps in between the sand grains are going to all close up and not allow any gases or vapors to escape. Permeability, if you've got decent permeability, it allows vapors and gases to escape through the grains of sand. But with this being molten and the vapors being generated in a microsecond, you're going to want to have all that stuff leave right now, okay, so that your casting isn't screwed up. All right, I've got that. I've got this. Now comes the fun part. And this is where so far I've been good to where I haven't screwed it up. But you got to flip this over now, right? It's not light. Whether you use Petrobond sand or you use green sand like this, it ain't light. So if you're like a 10-year-old and you're trying to do this, you better get somebody to do it for you, a grown-up. Or if you're a small guy or a small lady, this one here is probably a good 40 pounds, maybe. And it's not that easy to flip over. But I've done it enough in my life where it should be okay. Okay. Ta-da! Nothing fell apart. Yay! It ain't moving though. Why is it not moving? Probably because it got stuck on a piece of splinter. The bad part, and there's always good parts and bad parts of everything you do. The bad part of using this kind of sand, it dries out fairly quickly. So you've got to do your ram it up kind of quickly. Let me put this on here before it gets all dried out. All right. Okay, now here's where we have it. I just need, I don't need that one. I need this one. I rammed it up good enough to where I've got a portion of it is pushed in, but I don't want that to be there to keep these edges from coming on and flattening out. So I get rid of the excess. with this trowel. That's what it is a trowel. It's even in the molder rate, or rather in the molder job, it's called a trowel too. Okay. And I got to try and get rid of the granules that are being in the way. Now I've got to get the parting line formed in here. In this case, if you were watching the last video, I made a mark on the outside of this ring to tell me where the parting line is. So all I've got to do is to this down to there. Slowly but surely whittle this stuff away. And make a parting line. The closer you can get to making a good parting line, the less grinding you're going to have to do later on when you have this casting coming out of the mold. And the stuff you have hanging from the cope, you don't want it to be any thicker than necessary, because the thicker it is, the more weight that represents. So, to try and keep the weight from accumulating too much in the cope, when you're digging this stuff, you dig it at an angle, a shallow angle. Not a deep angle. There will be something in this casting that I'm going to show you that, if you've been paying attention to my other videos, I didn't cover yet. And it's one more of those things that you learn when you're a young molder, is that you don't just have in gates, you have both a bottom gate and a top gate. Okay, now what that means is that it differentiates between a gate that feeds the casting, or rather the mold cavity in the drag, bottom gate, or the whether it feeds the casting through a channel you cut in the top of the mold. Okay, that'd be a top gate, and in this case I'm going to make a top gate because we really don't have a lot of room in here to play. Okay, and I still want to have this this mold become pressurized. So if you were pouring it and you've got the splash basin and only the runner in here, and then up here you have the in gates, well, you're absolutely going to have a pressurized system, because this is going to fill up down here before it rises and enters the in gates. Okay, you're going to have everything being fed like it should be, and now you're going to have another technique to use. In your molding bag of tricks. Okay. Okay, getting there. This, at least, is not one of those jobs where you have a lot of detail you gotta have to worry about, like a plaque or some kind of artistic casting. This is about as basic a casting as you can get. One good thing about having a nice quiet garage, if that battery goes, at least it gives me a beep, and then I can stop what I'm doing and replace the battery. I tell you what, this is going to take a little while to get it right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you on pause, and then once I get this is all done on the outside, I'll bring you back to watch me do the inside. Okay? Okay. Now I've got this all done all the way around the outside, and what I'm doing now is I'm slicking it down so that it's fairly smooth and should come out of it, or rather the cope come loose easy. Now I don't want anything to stick to that anyway, so what I'm going to do is give a short amount of parting powder to keep anything from accidentally sticking to it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to dig down here. First you find the spokes. Find each one of these spokes and just expose the top layer, and it's half the battle really. Alright. Hope you guys can see well. Thankfully they don't put spokes just any old place. They will put them where they need to be, engineering wise, and it allows me to find them easy. Okay. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get I hate to blow the sand out because it's going to go everywhere. I don't have it set up to where I got barriers to keep it from going. But I also don't want to take all the time in the world to keep you guys bored, keep you guys watching and going to sleep. Where did you go? I know I had you out here. My good old air gun. Alright, where's the other air gun then? I know it's around here somewhere. I gotta find it. Okay, we're back. There's no hiding anything from you, is there? Okay, I've got more or less the entire parting line for this casting has been formed. Okay? Now, another thing that I do, which normally isn't done. Here's what we would normally do. We would now turn this sideways, but we would now put the cope on it, ram it up, okay? For instance, this, and where is it? I'm not seeing it. I know it's here because I just had it a little bit ago. There. This is going to be rammed up. That's going to form the open riser, as compared to a blind riser, blind riser right here. Okay, blind riser, and in the top half here, this is also going to be rammed up in there. I may as well mark it where it's going. All right, so that's what we have to do. That's what normally we would do. But there's a trick of the trade that I'm going to show you. And what it is, it's going to make certain that you're going to be able to get your end gates where exactly that you want them. But first, I'm going to put a little bit of powder on this, so all that work I did isn't going to get messed up. I hope you guys aren't getting all this. Okay. This is where the end gate's going to be, rather the sprue is going to be, right? So, I want to give it as much runner as I possibly can, okay? I'll mark basically where the runner is going to go. And over here too. Now, why am I making it that long when I could just go ahead and just push it into here? Well, because I'm not going to take the chance that this is going to freeze up on me and not allow the metal to enter these, which are basically end gates. These spokes that is going to be feeding the center hub, which has got to have a riser on it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, now that I've marked that, I'm going to cut this out. You start off at the end and just make it deep enough where you know it's not going to freeze up on you. And that's plenty deep for that. Okay. Dang, I got to get an air gun. I don't want all the air to go away, but I got to try and make my job a little easier over here. All right, maybe this will work. That other, the long one, I kind of like it better, but the problem is it leaks. And that means that I would have to stop and, you know, get that going again. Where are you? There you are. So that I could have more air, and I really don't want to do that. And I want to get very close to either one. Times like this, I wish I had a 16 incher. This is only 12 by 12. Now, remember, you're trying to make it deep enough for the metal to run all the way to the end before it provides back pressure and pressurizes the whole system. Okay. Normally, if it was any other casting, I'm only doing this because I'm going to be having top gates, not bottom gates. What I have to do is I have to ensure that I don't miss where I put the top gates. We're making the gates just about, the opposite way we normally make them. Let's see, this ought to make that a little better. No, don't. I wish I had another one of those cutters, but I guess I'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way. So, anyway, remember, don't try and go that thick judging by this upper edge. Go that deep judging by this lower edge. Okay? That way you'll ensure that you have that much cross-section in the runner so that you can ensure that the metal will get all the way to the end before it backs up and then flows in there through the upper gate, or rather top gates. I'm glad I made as much sand as I did, because if I mean, all this stuff that's down in here, I could probably use it, but it dries out fast. So I wouldn't really be sure as to its mechanical capabilities. All right, go just follow that again. See, it already feels like it's drying out. Which is in some cases is not so bad, because see, the bentonite that I buy from what's it? Gosh darn it. Mass Apothecary? Well, it's a company that you can buy all kinds of things from that are principally made for health and beauty applications. Okay? And that type of bentonite, which they do use for health and beauty applications, is a western bentonite as opposed to a southern bentonite. You know, I don't know if you have any other kinds of bentonites. I've never heard of any, but that's not to say it's not there, and I just never heard of it. Okay, before I go further, let's see if I can smooth this out a bit. Not good enough. Wish I had a smaller one, but I will someday get one. Okay, so this is where it's gonna go. Do I want to do that first or no? No, I don't need to do it first. Okay, what I was gonna do is I was gonna cut out the splash basin, but I'm not gonna. It's not necessary. Actually doing this right now isn't necessary, but it helps. I'll show you why. It'll help with the casting. The reason why I'm doing that, not only am I trying to keep it from, the upper half, the cope, from sticking to the drag, but I use this also to take the edges off and to smooth out the sand that's just been cut. Okay? It just barely takes off the first layer. Okay. Okay, so now let's see if I can, put it in there. I guess so. I'd better just go ahead and do it this way. Turn this that way. Before I get any further, I had better make a room over here for the coat to go into. Okay. Let's make sure that I got these matched up right. And I don't, do I? Nope, there's the marks. When you make your own flasks, you're not going to be making them a standard shape and size. You're always going to have a variation. Especially when you put these on, you're trying to get this to where it comes down on it as evenly as possible. If you get it backwards, you're not going to have these the same. All right. The only reason why I'm locking that in place right now, because when I ram it up, I really don't want this to lift. Okay, there's this, and there's this. Yeah, that'll stay there. That won't go nowhere. Which ones? I think I should just go ahead and make sure that this is cut to size. I got these little tiny things to get done, and I'll bring you right back, okay? Okay, I think you're going. All right, I cut. Let me get this out of the way. I can show you what it looks like if I open this up. Okay. As you can see, I've got the sprue in place. I cut down that piece of pipe so that it would fit in here, and it's going to become an open riser. I may be repeating myself, but it bears repeating. the two different types of risers that I've talked about the most. An open riser is a riser that is exposed or open to the atmosphere. Okay, you'll see it when it fills up. A blind riser is one that is in place. Like in this case, if I wanted a blind riser, I would put it right here like this. That would still act as a riser, providing, behaving as a reservoir of molten metal, so that the center hub, when it solidifies, draws molten metal from this mass right here. Okay, be a little bit difficult to try and pull that out. Let me see if I pull it all the way up. No, I could pull it out. It'd be easy enough. But I'm going to show. I'm not going to do it this time, because the deal I want to show you is when I'm pouring this. One of the techniques. When you have a situation like this, where you're introducing the molten metal into the mold cavity, and in this case, there's when it comes to the mass of something, okay, when you have so much cross-sectional thickness of anything, in this case, these spokes are the thinnest. This is second thinnest, and that's the thickest. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to make certain that this actually does get fed correctly, that it doesn't have a shrink in the middle of it. So I have to ensure that the riser that I use, I can make certain that the hottest metal being poured into the mold is in that riser. The way we do that for this, because it's a little bit unusual, if I just relied on like a riser out here to try and feed that, I would be making a mistake, because before that draws any metal to solidify, it would have to draw whatever molten metal there was out here through the thinnest part of this whole casting. And the odds are really good it wouldn't work, that this thinnest part of the casting would solidify before you could feed that. So I'm not going to take any chances. Like I said before, I'm essentially a pretty lazy guy. Don't want to redo everything that I've done. So I'm going to make certain that central hub is going to solidify properly. How I'm going to do that? Well, I could put that blind riser in there, and the odds would be very good that it would solidify. But here's another way of doing it. And because I'm not going to be able to speak very loudly when I'm pouring, and the pouring is not going to be in this video anyway, what I have to do is that after everything's been pulled out of here and I start pouring down the sprue, soon as I see, the metal starting to come up this riser, I stop pouring and pour it down here. That way I can ensure that the hottest metal, the stuff that was still in the crucible, that had not touched anything cold yet, was being poured in here, and this will all solidify, and that would solidify down there, and up here you should see piping. If you remember what piping is, it's like it forms a void in there, much like the inside of a pipe that people used to smoke in, kind of like a bowl of a pipe. So that's the reason why I'm going to have it like this. Okay. Now, don't want to screw this up by forgetting which way to go. I wish I could get you looking further down. I wonder if that'll come up even further. I'm going to see, hey, look at that, cool. I didn't realize this had an opening. All right, it says stop there. Now you guys will be able to see a little bit better what I'm doing. Not that it's any better than the other way. It'll be about the same process as before. Sweet. Okay. Well, you can see better. You just won't be able to see right here in there. Okay. Let's see, we get some of this. I've already put the parting powder in there. And now I need to get some sand. Put the facing sand on first. And if you haven't been asleep in class, you remember what facing sand is supposed to be. Alright. Let's try and fill this up. Now this area, I got to try and get it nice and tight, because I don't want any of that stuff that's hanging to fall, just because I haven't gotten it rammed in hard enough. Doesn't have to be a very thick facing sand, and normally, because you're just putting sand that you'll be able to ram it smooth, instead of having gaps and stuff. Now, just as before, see if I can get this spread out a little more. Just as before, you take your fingers and you tuck it in there so that none of this stuff moves. And here I am trying to tuck it just a little bit harder in that spot. In this spot, in the corner, it's a little harder because you don't really have a lot of room to put sand around the sprue, but if you're a good molder, you'll figure out a way. Okay. Scribe it, strike it, scratch it, so that this will bond well with the next part. Wonder if this is, yeah, it looks like it's still wet enough. Don't want to waste my sand is a bit on the sparse side. I want to make sure that I don't just let stuff lay there and get dry. Okay. Try to hold the stuff that you're ramming up. Keep it from moving, especially sprues and risers that you're ramming up. At least I know where the spot is I need to ram. Ow, dang it. Watch out for that. At least I know where it is. I gotta ram harder right now. Make sure everything is bonded together. Right, got this too. Don't want that to have a soft spot around it. Maybe we can pour all this in here. Yeah, not all of it. Spread it out even, or evenly. Now, if you're just joining my channel and you're noticing that I'm doing something different from what you see a lot of guys doing, you're probably right. I have seen people, their sprue be this big, and that when they pour it into their casting, they use this as the sprue and the riser combined. That probably wouldn't be so bad if they weren't pouring a copper-based alloy. Copper-based alloys, brass, bronze, and others, the copper in them is horrendous for absorbing atmospheric hydrogen. Okay, that when it tumbles in the air and when it hits hard and splashes, it combines with that atmospheric hydrogen, and it gets turned into what you might swear it looks like rust, except it's not going to be rust because it's got copper base rather than iron base. Okay, and then if that happens, the stuff that's the dross will be pushed into their casting, and it being not solid brass or bronze anymore, a combination of brass and bronze, or brass or bronze, and almost looks like oatmeal. It get lodged in your casting, and it doesn't allow for an attractive casting at all. And if you're making a casting that needs to be, it needs to be able to handle pressure, like a valve or parts of a valve, it's not going to do it because you're not going to have solid metal there anymore. You're going to have solid metal with part, the dross is going to be having a whole lot of gaps in between. That's going to let the pressure from whatever you're making go in those gaps. Okay, it's not going to be solid anymore. So please go to the videos that I made that has to do with making you know, the gating system. You will love yourself. I mean, it's not the easiest thing. It's probably the most technological or the hardest thing to learn in this here. But if you learn it, you will not be upset at yourself at all. If you're you know, if you like math anyway, it's not that hard. It's not like you're doing calculus, which I had to take when I was going through college, and I detested calculus. I knew that I needed to do it. I knew in order to get my degree in mechanical engineering, I needed to have that as part of my curriculum, but it just was not my bag, let me tell you. So, you know, so I got through it. I passed it. I'm not going to be anybody's, you know, person who solves the equation of light and all that good stuff, like our genius Eisen. Goodness, my brain is dying. Einstein. You know, I'm not going to be anybody's Einstein, but it was good. It was simple enough that a guy with minimal skills in the math department was able to get through it. This, and learning how to do making runners and ingates and the down screws and all that stuff, and the proper way to figure it out, the formulas and all that stuff, it's barely algebra, barely. It's closer, I think, to probably geology rather. Not even geology. Geometry. It's closer to geometry. And I found that geometry, you know, the formulas were basically already there. All you had to do is plug in the information that you needed to, and you would find out what you were trying to find out. Well, this is just as easy. Okay? Just as easy. But because some people just detested math when they were going through school, well, they've not had that much fun trying to do it. So I gave them during those videos an easy way of doing it. When you're cutting it like this, like I cut this in here, the ingates cut first. Next, the runners you cut after. You cut the runners next. The runners make twice as deep as the ingates. The splash basin that the metal comes down into and goes into the runners, the splash basin, make that twice as deep as the runners. Okay? And then whatever sprue that you use, like this sprue here, make sure it's a tapered sprue. It doesn't have to be huge at all. This one at the very end of it, I think, is maybe 3/8 of an inch thick, and that's going to be plenty of opening for this whole casting to be poured. Remember, when you're pouring the thin things, if you let it sit for any amount of time, it's going to, that part of the mold is going to rob the metal of its heat, and then it's going to freeze up. This is going to stay molten until you're done pouring. Okay? So there's no chance, unless you stop and you pause or something, there's no chance that this small sprue is going to freeze up on you before everything in here gets filled in. And you'll see on one of my videos that I went by the formula exactly, and for, you know, runners and ingates and all that stuff, and that my sprue chute, the opening of the down sprue was probably maybe 3/16, and it still filled up the entire, yes I did scratch that, okay, the entire casting. So don't try and fill a casting with a huge sprue. You're not only just going to generate dross, but you're going to, well, you're going to generate dross, and you know, other things will go wrong too with something that big. You'll see what I mean if you ever go to that glass video. Go to that video and pay attention to what I put out. Okay. Come on. Okay, well, the next thing, remember vent. Let's see if I can mark, where is it? The opening of the sprue. You gotta find it. There she is. I'll bet you I'd punch that down there a little more. This is the only thing I'm likely to hit if I wasn't paying attention. Remember, when you're doing it, try to remember where all of your mold or patterns are and not hit it. Because if you do, you not only might harm your pattern, but the mold cavity might also have a hole formed in the side of it. Let me see if I can, in one of the castings that I poured a little bit ago, show you what can happen. I don't hardly find anything. I got a tiny little example that you probably won't even be able to see. But see this? It looks like a little stalactite. Okay, that was, as you can see, the end of that. If you get it in here, the part, like if it's sitting out there, you might have a replication of aluminum like this on the outside. You're going to have to clean that off. So if you can help it, try not to hit the pattern at all. Okay, let's see if I can make room over here so that I don't trip over anything. Cross our fingers that the part here, oh good, kitchen didn't lock these, so this might wind up being raised up a little bit, which I don't like. Well, let's see if we can tighten it. It might pull it down. Ain't pulling it down too good. Oh well. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's try, see if See if I can get this pulled open without anything dropping. Not bad. Okay. Where is, there it is. Alright, well, part of it came out. The majority of it came out. Let's see if I can do it this way. I'm going to start digging a deep hole if I do that. Anyway, that's the reason why we put parting powder in there. You saw the majority of the sand lifted up and just was pushed aside. Okay, now we just make this. This is where using these double enders for a while comes in handy. Okay, there's my runner and my splash basin. Smooth things down. If I had this is called, by the way, this is called a Filat Iron. The pattern makers used to use these to apply fillets on patterns, and whether it be a wax fillet or a leather fillet or plastic or whatever, they would heat this up and press the fillet where a 90-degree angle would be on the pattern. And if you're a machinist, you know that 90-degree angles are the bane of existence when it comes to trying making things. You got to break your corners or break your edges. All right. Let's get you out of there before I screw something up. And here we go again. This, breaking the corners. Okay, so I'm going to have to figure out a better way of getting this out of there. I could put something in there and put a wedge in behind it. Good enough. That kind is good enough. It's allowing me to make more move. More, yeah. So if I put a little bit of strain on the side, now it's still moving. So I'm going to have to put a little bit, fill in this gap. Hello, dear.
Hello.
That's my wife over there. Hey, Jack, come say hi. She's shy, camera shy. All right, I'm going to put you guys on pause when I get this set up to where it'll actually work. Then I'll bring you back. Okay, I just remembered another way of doing this. All you got to do, put a bottom board down and then flip it over. And the weight of this pattern should allow it to fall out. Let's see if that works. I don't have a thing here, so that's all right. We'll just be real careful on how to roll this over. See if I can get this. I'm not done with that yet. I need to just lift this up. It shouldn't have anything fall out. There we go. Had a little bit sticking. Not that bad. I'm gonna have to get some more guides for this stuff. These wooden guides are probably just about the only thing they're good for is temporary. Okay, let's blow this out and then we can change places. That's not bad. Where do I want to put you? So you'll be out of the way. I'll put you over here on the bench. On this bench. Alright, so looking at my drag, splash basin's there, runners are there, this portion of the casting is there. Let's see if I can do a little motivating here. These are part of the spokes, and these are bumps in the spokes that would take some of the strength away. Just like this over here. These are the portions of the casting that somebody tried to weld, and all they wound up doing was blowing away the metal. A little bit of smoothing. And what do we got over here? Anything? Yeah, we got a little something over here that can be taken out. Okay. Looks good there. Okay, now I can show you where why I did what I did. Do I want to do it that way? Yeah. This is what was the impression made by the sand that got inside the runner. Okay, you just take that. Yeah, this would be good enough, and you take it off. Now, why would I take it off after taking all that time to put it on? Well, it wasn't the idea of putting it on, it was the idea of showing me exactly where the runner was going to be in this half of the mold. as you can see, it's easily found where that runner is going to be. Okay. Now, that can be taken away too. This fell out, so I don't really have to do much with it, but this we have to chop off. Now I know exactly where I have to put the end gates. Now, you've got a perfect end gate right here as part of the casting. Okay? End gate, end gate, end gate, end gate. That all goes to the center and will fill up the riser and portion of the hub that would have belonged to. So, knowing how far away, see if I can get this in my hand right, knowing how far away this runner is, I can go right to it and not be off. Now don't forget, when you're making an end gate, you don't want it to be more than 90 degrees. Oh, heck, let's see if I can use this to explain what I mean. Get me something dark enough. Yeah, nice Sharpie. Okay. You got a casting like that. You got runner, and you got a splash basin. When you're going in, wherever this is, you want this to be no more than 90 degrees straight in. Now, by that I mean, yeah, you can still see me. You're going to go, that's a 90 degrees, right? And here, you're going to be a 90 degrees. Here, 90 degrees. Here, 90 degrees. What you can't do is you can't, when this stuff flows, it can't come in here on something that's that far off. Okay? The reason why that is, let's see if I can get it closer. Bad thing about not being able to see what you are seeing. Let's see if I can bend this down and pour it over here. Okay, okay, splash basin, runners, end gates. Okay, if you have this end gate at a sharper angle than 90 degrees, remember this is all going to be filled with molten metal, which has hydraulic pressure. You don't want it to push against this corner to try and make it into that hole. Okay, it's what it's going to do. It'll go in there and it'll erode that corner away in the microsecond that it flows by it, and all that sand right there is going to be in here. Okay, so when you cut your own or manufacture your own end gates, make certain that you're not any sharper of an angle than 90 degrees. Otherwise you're going to push all that nice sand into your casting and you're going to have to do it over again. Alright, now I've got that far. Is that too big? Yep, too big. Doggone it, I'm going to get me another. I'm going to blow that out first. Now I've got to take all the edges away. It's almost time to get me a new sock. Oh, I forgot to do that one. That's what happens when you get talkative. Okay, it's right there. Yeah. All right, time to take this out. Now it looks like it's cracking right there. We don't want that. Now I'm going to remove the excess sand from here. You'll probably be able to see this one. This is a bump in the sand, which would have caused a indentation or gap in the arms. Okay. Okay, bums. Don't want you to all fall apart.